On this channel, we've often seen the Kala system, a system that's very easy to memorize and can also bring us great success. But who created it? Well, it was Edgar Colley, that impressive player. Today, we're going to see how this same player, instead of using the white pieces, carries out an excellent plan with the black pieces that we can use to our advantage in our own games. So pay attention. But before we start the video, I want to show you something really quickly because this message really made my day. It's from an Academy student and he literally told me this. I'll read it to you since it's in Spanish in case you're watching the video in English. I'd been stuck at 1100 ELO for about 10 years, and now I'm close to 1500. I'm enjoying it like never before. I make my coffee and log into the Academy every day. Receiving these kinds of messages from you, from students, really makes me especially happy. So if you want to join the Academy, you know what to do. It's right down here in the description. I'll be waiting here with my watch for the notification to pop up that we have a new student in the Academy. There's nothing that makes me happier than that. Edgar Colley started with knight f6, and white responded with c4. I must warn you about one thing. This is one of the games with the most beautiful finishes I've ever seen in my life, so stay tuned because you're really going to enjoy it. Edgar Colley sets up the Nimzo Indian defense. Do you know what defense this is? Well, when they play this kind of setup with c4 and d4 and develop their knight to c3, what we have to do is come and pin this knight with bishop b4. This tremendous defense became popular over 150 years ago, and today it remains one of the best for facing the queen's pawn. The idea is that now the black pieces want to put a lot of pressure on this knight on c3. For example, I'll explain it simply so everyone understands, with a knight takes e4, see? Putting a lot of pressure on this pinned knight. And later on, the 5 pawn is often played to bring the queen into the attack. Of course, you also have videos of the Nimzo Indian defense on the channel, and inside the Academy, you have it analyzed in depth, like all the openings. So here the white pieces continue with this queen b3. What's the idea? Well, to put a lot of pressure on this bishop before Colley has time to come and attack, right? So, all right, a bishop is being threatened, and here we have several options. Either withdraw it or exchange it for this knight, which is often done, okay? It's something that's usually done in the Nimzo Indian defense, exchanging this bishop for this knight, and I'll explain why. Because in this defense, particularly as in the vast majority of openings, the central squares are very important, and especially this e4 square. Because as you're seeing, both white and black are fighting for the same square. Also, since the d-pawn has advanced, the d-pawn specifically will never be able to cover this square again, right? So taking out one of the key defenders can be very important. However, Colley says the following: I want to keep this very strong attack going, so I don't want to move the bishop, but rather reinforce it. White takes this pawn, and now the normal thing would be to take it back with the bishop, right? Because suddenly, while this pawn was defending the bishop, once it's taken, it stops defending it, and the queen's attack is the same again. But here, Colley says, look, I'm not going to take this pawn back yet because I'll take it back later. In fact, you don't have many ways to defend it. For example, you can only do it with the bishop, and I can come and attack this pawn with 2 pieces, and I'll get it back immediately. Therefore, I'm going to defend this bishop while developing a piece. It's true he's down a pawn, but it's a pawn he can get back whenever he wants. So look at what he's achieved, right? Keep the attack. The game continues with knight f3, and look at what Colley does. Indeed, he puts this knight on e4 in such a way that he puts spectacular pressure on the knight on c3. If white now ignores everything and plays, for example, a pawn move, simply knight takes knight, or even bishop takes knight, and it would leave white in a laughable situation, right? This pawn structure is really disastrous. So here, white must do something about it to avoid having a double pawns. With this pawn here, how important, right, friends? It is to have a healthy pawn structure, huh? So that pawns aren't all isolated, doubled, right? It's very important. Furthermore, the function of this knight from e4 is not just to attack this point, but also to try to recover the pawn on c5, which Edgar Colley is currently down. Understand? So, well, obviously, white tries to defend this knight, because otherwise we've seen that the pawn structure would be horrible, and Colley captures this pawn with the knight. Hey, chess teacher, and why didn't he capture it before with the bishop? Precisely because of what we were saying. Because this bishop is very, very well placed, threatening a discovered attack, in some cases towards the king, even if there are pieces in between, right? And so now these two knights are magnificently placed, and the one that just captured on c5 threatens the queen. The queen must move. And now many of you would say, well, and now what do I do? What do I do? I still need to castle. I still need to develop this bishop. Well, maybe I could bring this bishop out via b6, via b7, right? To be able to take advantage of this great diagonal. This is what most mortals would do. We would castle. However, Edgar Colley takes it a step further and plays this 5-5. He controls the center. Huh? That's why with these videos, we come up with moves that we probably hadn't even thought of, right? With this move, we control the center, and not only that, but our pawn chain already indicates where we are going to carry out the attack. The queen will be able to pass when we dislodge this very important knight. Even when we castle, the rook can pass through the 6th rank, right? The game continues with e3 to develop the last bishop. And now, finally, Edgar Cole castles. White pushes the bishop away. Now what? What do we do with that bishop? We have to keep asking ourselves, move after move, what we're doing, right? Or what our plan would be. Now, we only have two options, either retreat the bishop or capture. Well, retreating it would be terrible, because then they could play b4 and give us the dreaded fork. A double attack on the bishop and the knight, so we couldn't save both at once. That's why there's no choice but to give up our bishop on b4 for the knight on c3. Makes sense, right? The bishop recaptures on c3. A very interesting bishop because it points right at the king. And now we have to consider where to develop our last piece. As you can see, it's crashing against this entire pawn structure. So we have to think about helping this bishop. If it's so sad here, crashing against all the pawns, let's open another diagonal so it can be placed, for example, on b7, from where it'll point directly at the enemy king. Obviously, we know he'll castle kingside, because on the queen side, the pawns are too open, and maybe our attack would be too devastating. The idea is that now then, he must move this bishop to castle. And so they did. Bishop b7, and indeed, Kaz went. Each player's carrying out their plan. I always say that chess helps us be empathetic, to put ourselves in other shoes. Do you know why? Because always, constantly, we must be thinking about what the opponent is trying to tell us with their moves. If we don't pay attention, you know what'll happen, right? They'll carry out a plan we didn't notice, and they're going to win the game immediately. Very well. Do we have a semi-open file? Yes. Which one? The file UCK. Why? Because we don't have any pawns. Even if it looks like an opening, a very closed file because it's full of pieces, we must take our rook to the C file because it's a semi-open file. We don't have any pawns, no friendly pawns, but an enemy pawn, okay? Rooks are happy on semi-open files, and even more so on open files where there are no pawns. The white player does the same. Pay attention. This is a concept that works very well. What's the only semi-open file for white? The file, and that's why he places the other rook there. Thinking ahead, Edgar Cole moves the queen away from this file, because if at some point trades happen at this spot, we could never recapture, right? Because we have the queen behind it. It's always better to be proactive and move that queen away. Watch out, they're attacking us, but well, this knight is very well placed, right? It's the best square it has, the e4 square, threatening this bishop. And here begins the key point of the game. The white player realizes that a strong attack is coming on the king side. Why? Because if you look closely, the bishop, no matter how many pieces are in between, is pointing directly at the king. The knight too. The queen will enter at some point, the rook as well, and he says, well, if you're attacking the bishop now, while it's true that the best move is probably to put it on b2 while I keep attacking, the proactive white player played bishop e1, trying to defend his castle position a little better. Mind you, always playing on the defensive, and only on the defensive, isn't a good idea, because then you're going to let your opponent attack with whatever they want. In this case, this bishop on this diagonal served a very important function, preventing the black pieces from joining the attack. And you're going to see such an elegant way to finish the game by Edgar Colley. At this moment, the white pieces try to do something that makes a lot of sense. When you find yourselves under attack, trade pieces. So what he did was knight to d4 to try to trade pieces, but he's doing something very wrong. moving away the best defender of the king side, which was the knight on f3. So look at what Edgar Colley does. Rook to g6, converging the attack of the rook and the bishop on the g2 square. So at this moment, what the player with the black-white pieces says is the following. I must defend this square. The best thing would be to retreat with the knight to f3, but every chess player knows it's very hard to regret a move and go back. That's why what he does is withdraw his bishop while it defends the king side very well. It seems he has everything very well defended, but Edgar Colley finishes the game in an elegant way. Pay attention, okay? Because it's going to fascinate you. Knight to g5, and after the move, king to h1. Why? Because entries are being threatened, for example, with knight to h3, entries at some point after the trades with knight to f3. So much better to move the king away. The ultimate combo is the following. If you've never seen this game, you'll most likely feel like crying because it's spectacular. First, knight takes knight to open up the bishop, right? We clear the bishop, and after pawn takes, the magnificent move that made this game go down in history. In fact, Tartakower, I think it was in one of his books, said this was one of the best games in history with this move, knight to f3. White resigned on the spot. Wait, Chessteacher, don't give me that, but nothing is happening here. There's no threat. First, you can't capture the knight because bishop takes f3 would follow, checkmate, thanks to the rook's action on the g-file. So simply, Chessteacher, I don't eat the knight, and that's it. Well, no, because here the threat is lethal. Queen to h4, and I'm going to mate you on the next move, and you tell me which piece I try to defend it with. Advancing the pawn wouldn't work because then queen takes, and the rook would simply come in given mate. Look how wonderful, right? So Chessteacher, well, if the threat is queen to h4, I play g3. Sure, this could be wonderful, but this wouldn't work either, because then I'd move the rook. Along this file, I threaten this square, and no matter how much, you come to defend it, I give it all up, I come in with the queen, and this is going to be checkmate in the next few moves, right? So as you can see, the attack seems lethal. The white pieces still have one last resource, and that is, well, to say if the problem here is with the knight, I'll play rook to d3 and my problems are over. Because on the next move, if you get a bit cocky, I'll eliminate the knight and nothing happened here. None. However, the queen's entry is once again lethal. I'm threatening checkmate on the next move. h3 doesn't work because it would simply be followed by queen takes h3, just like before, and rook g1, mate. Quite interesting, right? So how do I stop this checkmate? Is there any way? Well, no. The only way seems to be to eliminate this knight. There's no other choice. The thing is, then black would simply follow up with bishop takes f3. Look at what a beautiful finish and everything they had planned, huh? That's because they've practiced a lot of tactics in their life. And now what? Well, simply put, many things are being threatened, even if it seems like nothing is. You can't capture the bishop because queen g5 would simply follow, and I'll mate you on g1 next. There's no way to stop it. So many of you will say, okay, then I won't take your bishop. If you threaten queen g5, I'll put my bishop on d2, and now you really can't do anything to me. And then would come the most wonderful move of all, which would have been truly beautiful. Look at this, huh? What we've missed out on. Queen h3, wonderful. It can't be captured because it's pinned, and the triple threat on the g2 point is totally unstoppable. So the game would have ended in a spectacular fashion. And let me show you another comment because I'm bursting with excitement from another Academy student who says the following. I'll read it to you. Hi, chess teacher. I just wanted to thank you because after playing chess for a long time, I feel like for the first time I understand what to do in a game. Thank you, David, for telling me this. Truly. Thank you so much. He says, before I moved pieces just because, I often got lost without knowing the plan. And now I feel like I'm starting to understand positions and how to improve my pieces and when to attack. I still have a lot to learn, but now playing feels completely different. Thank you truly. Well, thank you guys. It really makes me incredibly happy that you're joining the Academy. And I'll tell you one thing, I recommend it 100% because if you join and don't improve or don't like it, I'll refund your money immediately. My goal isn't for you to join just to try it, but to join to improve your chess level and to really enjoy it with me. You know that if you join with a quarterly or annual plan, well, as soon as my alarm goes off, I'll get in touch with you immediately, either to give you a small gift or to help you create a personalized plan to greatly improve your level. I hope you love this video as much as I love recording it, and we'll see each other tomorrow, as always, in the next one, or if I'm lucky, with a new student in the Academy, which makes me very happy. Goodbye, friends.